Eric, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'm looking forward to diving in a little deeper into this topic. So thanks so much for hanging out.
No problem at all, Karen. I'm excited to talk to you.
Good. So, a question for you. Can you describe how a mastermind style discussion works? And also, I was thinking, how can associations use this discussion style to face some internal challenges?
It's a great question. You're not the only one asking it. There aren't too many people who are actually familiar with masterminds, even though they've been around for a while. And so for the people who care about it, I'll say Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, which was written in the 30s, 1930s, was talking about it. But Benjamin Franklin, as early back as 1727, had a mastermind of his own. So this is something that's really been around for quite some time. And really what it is, as Napoleon Hill described it, he said, this is verbatim, the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. And Benjamin Franklin talked about it being the club that he put together as mutual improvement. It's really two or more people coming together, basically realizing that they are stronger together than they are individually, that they can hold each other accountable, that they can support one another, push each other towards higher levels of success than they would achieve independently. So what we see traditionally, the traditional mastermind is usually about 6 to 10 or 6 to 12 people. They meet regularly. It's often business owners and entrepreneurs with common challenges that they're facing that they want to help each other through. The goal is that long-term development. You see it built into long-term coaching programs, for example, that you can pay to be a part of. There are mastermind groups and also mastermind communities. So for example, I started HR Hot Seat, which is a large community based still in that intimate mastermind style conversation. I think when it comes to companies and associations, and I've spoken on this with different companies, it's embracing that diversity of perspective and problem solving approach. So, for example, an association and with a company, and I have a background in human resources, within an association, we'll say, maybe somebody in charge of membership, a membership director, they're the ones that are tasked with solving membership challenges. And so the challenge arises and they have to figure it out, tackle it on their own and report back to somebody what they found. The mastermind style approach, respecting and appreciating diversity of perspective, says, well, what if someone in charge of membership also brings in someone who's responsible for marketing, and maybe somebody from technology, and maybe somebody from among the membership itself, to look at this challenge from different perspectives and say, are there a number of ways that we could tackle this? Can we think outside the box? Can we think non-traditionally in a way that will allow us to be more effective and efficient in problem solving than we would be otherwise? An example from a company I worked with, they said, you know what, we're a big consulting firm and our consultants had this challenge that they were faced with and they had no idea what to do about it. They had spent all this time thinking about it and they put their heads together and they finally brought in somebody from IT. And this guy from IT, who I think was just eager to be involved with the decision-making or the problem-solving process, said, you know what, I'm not a consultant. It's not what I do. But if I were to tackle this problem, this is the way that I would approach it. It ended up being exactly what they were looking for.
I love that. I love that.
So it's not there's nothing magical to it. I think really it's just embracing diverse perspectives and thinking about problem solving, approaching problem solving in a different way than associations have traditionally done so.
And I think you really hit the nail on the head. It allows you to be more creative, right? I think collaboration always brings forth just a new level of creativity. But collaboration actually means there's more than one person at the table trying to work through whatever that looks like. So I love that.
I could sit here by myself and twiddle my thumbs for hours trying to solve a problem. But if I get another small business owner on the phone, now suddenly I'm getting perspective because that person has been in my shoes, or maybe they haven't, but they just bring something unique to that conversation. I'm able to tackle the challenge and move on. And that's that diversity of perspective and background and experience ends up being just so valuable to associations.
Absolutely. You know what I also noticed from a good mastermind? Yes, everybody brings their own thoughts to the table, but also once you start to hear other people share their thoughts, it sparks new thoughts and creativity that probably was tucked far away in the back of your brain, but it now is being brought to the surface because it's been provoked by a different perspective or conversation or new knowledge even. And so it even helps you to rise to the occasion and bring out new knowledge.
My experience is in problem solving looks, how do I put this? I've always approached problems probably from a similar perspective because I have my own personality style and my own communication style. And so I approach problems in a particular way. You and I sit down and I learn that you're so much more creative maybe or analytical than I am, or you just have a different comfort zone. Whatever that difference is, I can't help but be inspired by that and think, holy cow, why would I tackle challenges by myself ever?
That's right. We're not meant to go through this life alone, that's for sure. So right now we're in this unique place in the world where there's a lot of remote work that's happening. So what would you say are the keys to successful team communication during this time of remote work? And it also kind of plays into how can teams stay focused on communication even if they're not in the same room? That tends to be a challenge.
So Karen, you're speaking my language with this communication stuff. This is right up my alley. I spend a lot of time with the DISC personality assessment, so I can't help but come at communication through the perspective of diverse communication styles and leadership styles and sales styles and management styles. I am big on having communication be both productive and meaningful. And I think traditionally, we really focus on the productive piece. That if you and I are communicating, we want to get to some end goal or objective, we want to get there efficiently perhaps, and achieve whatever we've set out to achieve together. I think that meaningful piece becomes so important, especially in times like this when people aren't meeting face to face. And there are a couple of different ways that we can make that communication meaningful. I think number one right now, it's all about an accommodation. It's understanding that people are individually motivated in different ways and they have different communication styles, and somebody may really take to Zoom and they may love it. They may say, hey, 8 hours today on Zoom, I'm good to go. Let's throw in another conversation.
Because they're like, I can keep my pajama pants on and I'm still comfortable.
Right. As long as I don't stand up, we're good. And then other people who say, honestly, I was done with Zoom after the first conversation. Those differences in communication style, I think at times need to be accommodated, so that people are being treated as individuals. And then also that those differences in communication style need to be understood and learned to begin with, but also embraced. That we can't assume that other people prefer that we do when it comes to how we connect with each other, meaningfully or otherwise. Even if our goal is productive communication, different people are going to have different ways of approaching that communication. To have it be meaningful, quite often there's a nonverbal component. When we're face to face, it is said that up to 93% of the meaning of what we say comes through in our nonverbal communication. When you're face to face, that's a little bit more easily done. When you're working remotely, it's less easily done. So if you're spending a lot of time on the phone with your team, keep in mind that there's a lot of information that you're missing out on. You're missing out on the person who sort of makes a face that they don't get what you're saying. It doesn't align with their values. It doesn't resonate with them. Jumping on Zoom or a different video conferencing platform allows you to get some of that nonverbal communication. It's still not perfect, but allows you to get more of that communication. So in the moment when you see or perceive that someone's confused by what you're saying, you can pause and say, am I making myself clear? Is this coming across in the way that I intend for it to? And then the people on the other end of that communication, the people who are receiving it, have the chance to respond and say, well, thanks, actually, I don't really fully get it. I don't understand. Mm-hmm. And then being able to cater to them and accommodate them in that way becomes meaningful. I think it's been said that, and I forget exactly how this goes, but one of the biggest mistakes in terms of communicating with one another is to assume that it's taken place, that what you have intended to communicate has been received in the way that you intended. And so recognizing that people have different styles, different people need different things from you when they're working from home, working remotely for the first time, perhaps ever. Keeping that stuff in mind, whether you're a leader or simply a colleague, a peer, is so invaluable.
Yes, that's so key. I think a lot of times we miss communication. We are not able to bridge it because we have these rigid expectations in our own mind that the way we interpret information is the same way that somebody else should interpret it. So I'm saying it in the way that I would understand, but maybe I'm not saying it in the way that is beneficial for you. Once we realize that, as you mentioned, different styles of communication, I mean, that just helps to, again, contribute to more collaboration and creativity and all the things that we were talking
Right.
about.
Right. I'm detail oriented and analytical, so I expect that you're going to be detail oriented.
Right. And then I'm sitting over here with storytelling kind of in my brain. I'm like, why are we not on the same page?
Right. And
Yes.
I think, just I think naturally we're thinking in terms of that production. What do we need to get done, and what's the most efficient, effective way to get there? And I assume that the most efficient, effective way is my way. And some other people may agree, but for the people who don't, you're missing them, especially when they're working from home and they're all kinds of confused. They have all kinds of questions about what's expected of them now, what team culture even looks like going forward. You really have to give people that space to be themselves, to show up with their individual motivations and fears and preferences and accommodate those and cater to them and respect and embrace them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so speaking of team culture, that's another thing. We talked about communication kind of being challenged during this time, but the pandemic has also taken a toll on everyone, and it can be tough to show appreciation to staff without in-person events. For instance, you can't cater lunch and show that appreciation, or plan a staff outing, or to give that morale kind of booster as a thank you. So what are some of your suggestions for cost-effective ways to recognize staff and acknowledge their commitment to help that team culture, and really shine on them and say, we appreciate your commitment to the organization during this time?
I think people are quick these days to say millennials need to have their values aligned. There's all this talk about millennials, and I encourage associations and companies to step back from generalizing in that way, and sort of acknowledge that people of all ages and all generations want to have a meaningful connection to the work that they do, that they want to feel that they belong to a culture, that they're seen and respected as individuals, and that they want to do their best work for an organization whose values very much align with their own, which, when it comes to the association world, now that I'm thinking about it, is more easily done sometimes than in companies, because associations can be so specific about what their mission is and so mission driven. And so I think it's again, making those accommodations, certainly recognizing differences in communication style, recognizing that people want to be recognized in different ways, that what's going to work for one person isn't going to work for somebody else. Neither did it when we were face-to-face and we were in person, in the office. And that certainly applies to what we do remotely. So a couple of ideas and things that I've seen organizations and associations do. Number one, you mentioned that you can't cater a team meal, but you can have food delivered to somebody's home. That's something that's still possible. And I think really, honestly, I feel like the sky's the limit to some of the things that you can do right now to get creative about how you are demonstrating that you appreciate somebody. I've seen companies and associations have good luck with peer recognition programs. So rather than it being just something that a supervisor or a leader does, you empower one's peers and colleagues to be able to recognize one another. And studies show that people would recognize each other more often if given the tools and the platform to do so. Certainly embracing technology for things like Zoom happy hours, even for those of us who may be zoomed out at this point, we can still appreciate that the organization that we're doing work for wants to bring us together in ways that aren't always work specific, we'll say, and professional in nature. One of my favorite ideas that I've seen, recognizing somebody in a way that benefits their entire family, benefits the entire household. Sending food is one way to do it, but there are so many things, gift cards, fun stuff that the person says, I appreciate that I'm being recognized in this way, but I especially appreciate that I can involve my loved ones in this celebration. I think that really speaks a lot to the culture of an organization and says, we not only care about the people who are doing work specifically for us, but we care about the people that they care about. And that That really is huge.
Oh my gosh, those are such great ideas. So just to recap, because they were so good. So first is to think of creative ways to still get food to them. You can still send food to them, which is actually really fun. And also to, I heard a company one time call it throwing sun. You know how people say you're throwing shade, but they throw sun to one another, and they'll kind of pass the mic around, and they will speak into each other's lives and say, I appreciate this about this person, or they showed up for me. And it could be really small, but it actually brightens that person's day. And then, yes, including the family. I think that that is so key, because we're all balancing a lot. And I think that sometimes we feel like maybe the employers are missing that we also have a family that we're taking care of. And it's an unusual time for family dynamics. But you're so right. If we just acknowledge that and show that we value not only you, but your family, I think that would go a really long way.
And I would say, Karen, what it comes down to is caring enough, whether it has to do with communication or it has to do with recognition, to sit down virtually with individuals and say, how would you prefer that I communicate with you? How would you prefer to be recognized for the work that you do? And listen actively to how they respond, and follow up in a meaningful way. Respond yourself in a meaningful way. Making that individual connection will go such a long way to reinforce effective communication, effective recognition, and make the culture of your association one that people very much want to be a part of.
Yes, that's so true. Oh, Eric, thank you so much. You gave so many wonderful golden nuggets of knowledge. I appreciate that. Great ideas. And I would just encourage everybody that these are great ideas for today and the times that we're living in right now. But these are great ideas to continue to instill into your culture, because as Eric just mentioned, it will help your culture to thrive and to boost the morale, and just for everybody to feel seen and loved and valued and cared for. So Eric, thank you again for spending some time with me today.
You're very welcome. I really enjoyed our conversation.